What's up, guys? How's it going? Huei-Yuan coming to you from Cupertino, California. Today is Sunday, our Sunday live stream lesson. The date is April 19th, 2020. I want to welcome everyone that's watching. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments down below. It's our free lesson on Sunday. So yes, it's about the drumming content, and today's topic is going to be about practice habits 2.0. The habits that maybe are not as obvious to you that you should be working, that you can incorporate into your practicing, like starting today. But it's also about, the current situation that we're in. It's a little bit of a community hang for us as we're coming through. So if you'd like more free resources, you can go to huei-yuan.com/free lessons. And as I said before, let us know where you're watching from down in the comments below. If you enjoy the content, please like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and just say hi. So I'm going to say hi to a couple folks, and we're going to get right into it. What's up? Like say, obsolete. How's it going, guys? And we're going to get this Drumline blueprint feed coming in here in a second. All right, Facebook, YouTube. Hi, guys. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for coming to the feed. Let us know, again, like I said, in the comments. Just say, hey, what's up from Cupertino, California, as we're coming in. The handout for today, there's a couple things that are coming out today, so you make sure you stick to the end so we can tell you about all the goodies that we have prepared for you today. But we're going to use the handout from, was it last Sunday? This egg beater handout, which is on that link I gave you earlier, huei-yuan.com/free lessons, episode 7. But if you sign up for that, we're also going to be notifying a bunch of other things as they're coming out this week. So check it out, and let's get into it. Okay, so practice habits 2.0. It kind of starts with this lesson. So I'm going to try and see if this audio is coming through and play a little bit of this for you guys. And Instagram and Facebook folks, you guys can kind of just see if you can hear a little bit of this. And if you hear an echo, just let me know. Okay. It's starting with zooming in and zooming out, but we're going to use this as kind of a starting point for us.
Today we're going to talk about one of the most powerful practice strategies that you should be utilizing in your practice: zooming in and zooming out. So we've all played some sort of grid pattern before. If you haven't seen a grid video, just look up what is gridding and drumming, or reference our good friends, the Grid Book series. But let's take a basic pattern where we grid a drag through the 16th note grid. So the first pattern is downbeat drags, right? And then we have like tap drags with an accent, right? And then you have the drag on the and then we have a drag on the So the whole thing, let's go 88 on the metronome. Now, most commonly, what I'll see students do is they say, hey, I'm practicing gridding my drags through the pattern, and I'm gonna practice drags in my 16th note grid. And then they'll do what I just did over and over and over again, right? Or maybe they'll even 4-2-1 it and go into the 2s and the 1s, and they'll just play it over and over and over again. And in this video, what I wanna highlight for you is, as you're practicing, this is the key thing that you need to be doing. You need to be diagnosing yourself as you're playing the pattern. And this is, we're starting right now, that's a zoomed out perspective, right? And as you're playing, you need to listen to yourself and say, hey, what sounds good, what doesn't sound good? So I'm gonna play the same thing again, and I want you to listen and see if you can tell.
All right, so here, thanks guys. So this is part me experimenting with my setup, part us building out how we're gonna do this. So in that example that I just played, I talked about how most students, if you see people who are practicing it here, hey, what's up from Brazil? Tony, oh, I forgot to say hi to everyone. Hi, Tony, how's it going, guys? Sir Will Oliveira, hi. Hello. I'm sure Christian is probably watching, maybe catching the replay after this. If you guys are catching this on the replay, make sure you say hi as well, because those will show up in our comments down below as well. Tristan, welcome. So practice habits, yes. If you're not doing like the basics that your teacher's always telling you about, using a metronome, using a mirror, practicing regularly as you're going day to day, then that's like the ground entry for, like, you've got to be doing those. That's the cost of entry. If you want to get good, if you want to be performing with all the other big boys and big girls in any sort of performance art, you need to be doing the things that you're supposed to be doing daily, Okay, now we're calling this Practice Habits 2.0 today because here are some things that I didn't think of practicing this way until I got older. And I say older, but like into college. So at this point, I've been playing since middle school, 3 years in middle school, 4 years in high school, 2-3 years, 4 years into college. And I'm sure my teachers told me about this along the way, but it just didn't click for me until I got into college. And so today we're going to talk about some of these strategies, what you could be doing, and to maybe shift some of the thinking in your practice. And then we're going to apply it to some of the examples of how you might be able to use it from our egg beater lesson from a couple weeks ago. Okay, so hey, what's up, Ultimate Drill Book? Thank you for coming into the room, guys. Okay, so number one, in that video example that we just played, I talked about zooming in and zooming out and how most students would just rep the whole thing over and over and over again. Okay, and what I want to pull up, let me see, I'm going to be showing you some of the cool thing about today is I'm going to show you some of the work that we're doing behind the scenes also. Admittedly, I almost didn't do the stream today, guys. It's Sunday again, and I'm like in the computer, I'm working. I'm looking at the time like, do I stop working and do I do the stream or do I just keep going? And I said, hey, you know, professionals, they show up. There's a difference between professionals and amateurs. Professionals show up, and needed to show up today, but also we'll kind of dovetail the two together, so I'll show you some of the things that we're working on in the background. Okay, so how do I pull up this? I want to pull up this egg beater handout. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can pull this up. Yeah, okay, cool. That was surprisingly fast. Okay, so in this example, and let me pull this up on the screen for everybody. Thank you, sorry. Thanks, Matt, for pointing that out. I noticed the meters just as I was doing that. You're welcome. So most people, what they do is they play the exercise from top to bottom all the way straight through. And they wouldn't do these things that I'm about to talk about starting now. Okay, so these are things that you've probably heard about, but let me just reiterate them, and then maybe we can talk about them. And for all the teachers and students out there also, if you have different perspectives that you can share on these topics, please chime in the comments, because this is a great way for us to just kind of start the dialogue. I'm learning just as much as I'm sharing here, so please share your thoughts with me as you're doing this, okay? And I'll pop up some of those comments as we're going through. So the first thing that I always talk about is when you're practicing, and this is one of the first things I didn't realize until I got into college, but what you probably have heard before is quality over quantity, right? So quantity in this case is if I play 10 reps of but 7 out of those 10 reps I'm breaking in the middle, or I have a like a more slurred interpretation of the drag, right? And I do 10 reps where my drag is slurred. That's not quality. I've just gotten quantity, and it's actually a bad quantity, right? And the part 2 of that quality over quantity is this correct reps bit, right? Because what you have to realize is for every negative rep or incorrect rep or habit that you're not meaning to program yourself with, for every one that you do, you could actually be teaching yourself the incorrect habit unintentionally, right? So this is why it's so important that as you're doing this, there are a few things that you can set up for yourself to make it more beneficial, higher return, so that you're doing less reps, but the quality of your reps are higher. And for me, the thing that was like, wait, what? What are we doing? When I got into college was, you're just supposed to be logging correct repetitions. That's the game. The more correct repetitions you can log for yourself, the more likely you're going to be able to recreate that when you need it in the moment as you perform or practice down the road. The example that I like to give for this when I'm trying to explain this to my students is, with pilots, or when you're driving, right? Again, it's the driving analogies that never make sense for students. But you can imagine as a pilot, you have to log X number of hours of flying, X number of flights, takeoff, landing, takeoff, landing, takeoff, landing. If every 7 times you take off, out of 10 times that you take off and land, 7 times you crash or you don't take off properly, like who's going to want to get in your plane, right? So as you're playing, you've got to make sure that you're demonstrating quality over quantity, and just remember that you're logging correct reps. That's super, super important. Okay, so let's apply it to what we're looking at here today. We're going to look at this first chunk, right? And this is your first line. So instead of looping it over and over and over again, right, the first strategy that you might try is to take small chunks. Okay, so let me break out the metronome here. Instead of playing the whole thing over and over again, what you might do is just play the first line. Okay, so I'm going to turn the metronome over here. What did I put this on? I think I did like 130. Take a dip, take a dip. I think this is my problem. My problem tempo here, but. Okay, so instead of playing this entire exercise, all 3 lines or all 3 films straight through, what I would do is I would just master film 1. And this is super, super, super important, because as you see this in film 2 and film 3, the demand is only going to get higher as you add on an extra note or add on extra counts. It's only going to get harder. So if you have any cracks in your foundation in film 1, those are going to start to show up as you add on for film 2 and film 3, okay? So strategy number 1 is I would just take that first chunk, and I would take a small chunk and make sure I'm playing it correctly. Maybe just the right hand. Trying to make sure that every note starts right on the beat. Ends on the and. Timing, right? Turning from the wrist. Relaxing the shoulders. How about 2s? Ones. Right? And there's so many variations that you could be doing on this. You could do it just on your right hand. If you're chopping out, you could be doing a variety of heights, a variety of tempos, and increasing the speed. But small chunks. Small chunks meaning maybe you just do 4 beats of the right hand. And then tap yourself off. And this is like a small teaching tip too. Oftentimes, I'll have students tap off in lessons. Like I'm tapping off, and then I'll point to them and I'll say, "Hey, why don't you?" Like I'll point to them as I'll go, and I'll point to them like that, and that means they play the tap off. And I find that I remember there was a shift for me when I went from being like a junior in high school to senior high school. My senior year, I was center, and I had to tap off, right? And there were a lot of things that happened when I started tapping off. I mean, like I was accountable for those 4 or 8 beats in between. Sometimes I would have to talk as I was playing, which is like the beginning of, teachers when you first start teaching and playing and talking. Anytime you realize that that's another thing that you kind of have to learn how to do. But as the person who's tapping off, if the time gets weird in between, or you mess up the tap off, then you have to be accountable. So it's a good time for students to kind of model. I'm modeling the tap off, and they have to tap off also. And that makes sure that they're thinking and feeling the beat in between as well. And all of a sudden they're playing by themselves, so it's super exposed, right? So those are all things that you can be doing. Small chunks as you're doing this. All right, so let me tie this in the best that I can with showing you guys a little bit of what we're working on here. So what you guys should see on the screen now is this is a demo page of something that we're working on right now. And yeah, I'll play just a little bit. Let me see if the sound's working okay.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Here's an egg beater breakdown that we can use starting with Huei-Yuan. Right, right, right. And left, left, left. Okay, from there we're going to add one note off the other hand. So for the right hand it'd be right, 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 left. And off the left hand it'd be left, 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 right.
It's a little bit quiet.
5/4 bar, so you get the syncopated pattern. From there, we fill it in, except for the last one off each hand, we'll leave open like we just played.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is coming up through okay. Maybe Facebook and YouTube viewers, you guys can let me know if you're able to hear that. It's a little bit on the side. We put this together kind of quickly. I didn't have time to compress the audio. I'm also curious to see this on the playback if there's a lag as I'm playing this via the live stream. So anyway, so with this first tip of practicing small chunks, one thing that I might do is I would just highlight this first thing. And if you're seeing this for the first time, this is one of the things that we're building right now. Let me move myself out of this. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this viewer. So this is one of the projects that we're working on with our Drumline Chops team. And if you haven't heard about it, Drumline Blueprint, which is our media company, has partnered with Percuss.io, which is our technology division, and now we've come together to work together on Drumline Chops. And one of the things that we're doing is creating integrated multimedia video and notation sync teaching resources and learning resources. So this is an example of how you might use this based off of these practice habit 2.0s that we're talking about today. So this first strategy of taking smaller chunks, I would just highlight this first chunk like this, right? And then I'm just hit play, and I've got the loop on, and what's going to happen is it's just going to loop this bar. I'm sure there's going to be some latency between me playing and the recording. Alright, that's probably terrible in terms of synchronization because of the latency that's going to be occurring. But here's the other thing that gets me really excited about this, is if that's going by too fast and you haven't quite figured out how to get that natural decay that comes with the Huei-Yuan, you take this and you slow it down. And immediately you can see that there's a video example of your teacher or whoever that we've put into this video demonstrating that motion. And you kind of see, like, now all of a sudden you can see my back fingers. You can see how the natural motion, when am I lifting for each one of those notes. Still too fast? Right? And you can do this for a long time. I mean, you have to do a bunch of these reps, right? Like, just do so many of them that you've done it right. And the thing that most students are missing, you can do the same thing with the left hand here. Now I can see the lag here from what I hear and what I see. And once you get that, speed it up a little bit. Right? And usually, I mean, 9 times out of 10, and admittedly I was doing this even at the point where I was performing regularly, where you'll be working on something, tell me if this has ever happened to you, and let's say we're taking something, we go up. Right? And you do it badly 7, 8 times, 9 times. Finally, on the 10th rep, you get it right once, and what do? you go on. No, which is what you're not supposed to do, right? You have to do it 9, 10 times in a row correctly. So once you've done it right that one time, you've just arrived. And in fact, you're still kind of in debt. You're in like repetition debt. You've done it wrong 20 times or 10 times previous to that. You've got to do it right 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 more times before you go on. And so that takes us to that point of logging those correct reps. So to make it easier for yourself to log those correct reps, the first step is to take a smaller chunk. And the second thing is to do what we just did, which is to slow it down. Okay, and it's maybe a little bit more obvious in this second chunk. Let's take a look at this part. So this part sounds like this. Okay, so let me just put that in context. Hold up. That's right, Dennis. So you've got to do it enough times in a row to when you do it correctly, it's not like a, wow, I got it, right? Which you have to get that feeling. You're doing it wrong, it's not right, it's not right. And if it's not right, for example, if this is too fast for you, strategy number 1 is just to take a smaller chunk. Just do the first one. Just do one. Oh, I'm blowing up the system here. Hey-yo. Okay, so. And that might still be weird. Maybe you're gapping that first left hand. Or you're coming in early. Or your right hand rhythm's not even. Right? So you can see how if you don't have this down from film 1, when you get to film 2, if your right hand is the problem, then you can't even start thinking about making that left hand in the right place, right? So the first step is just to get film 1 locked down and then make sure that you can do this really, really well. Okay? And if it's still not happening, then you do strategy number 2, which is just to slow it down. So check this out. So now we're combining 2 pieces together, which is small chunks and slowing things down. And again, you've got to log quality over quantity. It's better to do 10 correct reps than it is to do 100 reps where 90 of them are wrong and 10 of them are correct. You still end up with 10 correct reps, but again, quality over quantity. Okay, let me pause here for a second and see if there are any questions as we're coming through. Let me just fire up over here for our Drumline Blueprint folks. Any questions? And guys, please share your comments as we're going through this as well. Dennis Johnson, drummer, says, thanks for sharing. You're welcome, Dennis. Thanks for participating. And Dennis also says, rep until you can't get it wrong. And that consistency is the key. I totally agree. The consistency, and you beat me to it, Dennis. And thanks for coming in. Which is, a lot of times, people focus on, like, you practice so that you can learn the notes. And that's actually, I mean, base level. To practice so that you get the notes. You're logging these correct repetitions for the piece that Dennis is talking about. And I wrote this. There's actually one thing I'll talk about before this, but let's talk about now, which is the consistency piece, right? When you look at the top world-class players, there's a reason why when I was in high school and I saw world-class groups, I was in complete awe of them, right? Because they were perfect from everything that I could tell. When you see them play, it's like they never mess up. Every rep is perfect. And really what's happening is they're performing at like 90%, right? There's always another layer, a level of clean or clarity that they can get to, which is what they're working on. But to the average listener, when I was in high school, like their 90% is already 100% to what I can perceive, what I can hear and see, right? But the other thing that when you get to that world-class level, if you're going to an audition, if you're actually playing those lines, those players, and one of the things I've always thought about is when you're a vet, right? Let's say you've marched a summer of drum corps, and then you come back around to November auditions, and then you're standing next to someone who's never marched drum corps before. The disparity between those two is just, it's like almost insurmountable. You know, it's a little bit daunting to think about this, and don't let this discourage you, and I'll tell you why here in a second. Because if you think about a vet who has marched an entire summer of drum corps, they've done pre-tour, spring training, 12 hours a day for however many weeks. They've toured the entire country. They've performed in front of these large crowds. They've done all the lot warm-ups. They've padded on the bus, all the practice that they did to even get into the room for the audition to make it. And all of a sudden, they're standing next to somebody who's never marched a summer drum corps. Think about how many correct reps that vet has over a person who's auditioning. So let's say you are that person who has never marched before and you're auditioning. Now, how many correct reps do you need to be logging in your basement by yourself or in your room with the door closed in front of a mirror and a metronome? How many correct reps do you need to be logging to even be in the same ballpark as that vet, right? And so the advice that I would give to someone who's auditioning is if you even want to be in the running, you know, one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I was auditioning was when the staff is looking down the line, they should not be able to distinguish a vet from the person who's auditioning. Right? Your goal is to look and sound like a vet. Because as they're looking down the line, if you look and sound like a vet, that's one less person that they need to be worrying about, right? So they'll just kind of scan down. And so I've met students who, when they're practicing by themselves, they think, oh, I just need to learn the packet. Well, I've learned it, and maybe they haven't even memorized it. It's like, no, you've got to learn it, you've got to memorize it, and then you've got to perfect it and polish it to the level of a returning member. And you realize that they've been playing those warm-ups and those exercises for an entire summer, times however many hours per day, per month, for an entire season. I mean, just like, you got to be logging your reps, your correct reps, small chunks, slow down, quality over quantity, and then you can develop that consistency piece, right? So you need to be able to do it 10 times in a row correctly before you go on. If you do it 10 times, 9 times are wrong, you do it right once, and then you go on, chances are, again, if you go back to that plane analogy, if you take off 9 times, you crash 9 times, and you make it the 10th time, most people are not going to sign up for your flight, right, as we're coming through. So consistency is key. Dennis also says, even after playing it for 50 years, I still rep every day. Absolutely. It's part of who I am. I played under Tom Float, woo, and his philosophies still ring in my ears to this day. Ooh, Dennis, I would love to hear some of those life lessons and some of those strategies and philosophies that you employ in your own teaching. Please share some of those in the comments with us. So you can see, and I would second that idea that Dennis is sharing, which is, you know, I've been playing, 25 years now, I guess, right? And probably Dennis and I would say the same thing, which is we're still playing the same basic core things every day at the beginning of our warm-up just to get our body in tune. And you can always play 8 on a hand, or 8/8-16, or 16 on a hand a little bit more in time, a little bit more perfect, a little smoother, a little bit more relaxed, right? And it's this endless pursuit of doing things better and better as you keep going, right? So the consistency piece is really, really important. And one more thing I would add to this before we get back to the music is many reps. It's super important that most people just don't log enough reps, okay? And I touched on this in that drum corps piece. You have to realize that there are times, I remember, where we would go and have a snare sectional, and we would just be under a tree in the shade, you know. Thankfully, we'd find some shade, and we'd be under a tree for an hour just playing 8s, 16 on a hand, and everyone is just tuning their ears to each other, right? And most people, I think, when they think like, oh, I did it 5 times in a row, I'm good, or I did it 10 times in a row, I'm good. I'm talking like 10, 20, 30, 100, 1,000 times correctly. So many times correctly that you can't do it incorrectly, right? So many times right that you can't do it wrong. You've got to log more reps. And here's the 2.0 piece of advice to that, which is, yeah, you're doing it right, but it's really important to notice that when it's right, what does it look like? What does it sound like? And more importantly, what does it feel like when it's right? Right? And here's the teaching tip here also, and this is something I didn't realize when I was younger and I first started teaching, or even in my first couple of years when I was in staff at the drum corps level, which is when things are right out front, you have to make a point of pointing that out to the players. should get out of this music view mode. When things are correct out front, you have to make a point of narrating that to the players, because sometimes we forget, but as teachers, partly you're teaching the mechanics of how to play, what you're playing, right? But also, one of, if not the biggest things that you're teaching as a teacher is ear training, right? You've got to teach students what to notice, what to hear, what to draw their attention to, and then when it's good or when it's bad, so that they can start to make those discriminations themselves, right? If you're playing and you're like, oh, that's fast, that's slow. As a teacher, you can hear those things, but as a student, they don't know if they're fast, they don't know if they're slow. So you've got to mention that when it is correct, you say like, yep, that was it. Do you hear that? Do you see what that? And then you point out to them, what does it look like? What does it sound like? And then what does it feel like as a player? Like, yep, okay, I understand that's what it feels like when I'm doing the correct repetition. Okay? All right, what's up, March and Hell? Thanks for coming to the room, guys. Appreciate that. Hi, Robin. Welcome. Gerber. Let's see if there are any comments. I see some more comments coming through. I'm going to grab a little drinky drink, a swig of water here. And there's too many things happening today. Dennis says, oh man, these are great. Let me throw some of these comments up here. And Dennis, thanks for chiming all these. Okay, so first off, Dennis says, even after playing for 50 years, I still rep every day. It's part of who I am. I played under Tom Float, and his philosophies still ring in my ears to this day. The only float exercise I learned when I was in high school, I mean, I know that gritting is kind of where all that originates from. This is a disaster waiting to happen. We'll move this over here. But there was a float flams exercise. Like hit your top. Cheese. Wait, what would you do with the cheeses? Oh, you take it without the drag, so. That was a big one for me when I was in high school. Okay, awesome. Let me pull this comment up here. Rep with the style of the line you're auditioning for. Simply playing notes won't get it. Great point, Dennis. So with technology, the age of technology that we're in right now, you basically have no excuse not to know what you're going into, right? Compare that to my first year when I auditioned drum corps, which was in like the early 2000s, late 90s now. I'm a junior in high school, and we go to the first Colts camp. And my buddy Nick and I, we have no idea. We didn't even know there was a packet before we showed up. That just shows you how clueless we were when we got there. But we didn't have a packet. So when we signed in, they're like, do you have a packet? And we're like, what's a packet, or what's the packet? And they're like, okay, here, you take this. And so we had to learn all the exercises. But then they had this like really interesting approach that I wasn't familiar with at the time, where it was, let me see if I can remember this. 1/3 finger, 1/3 wrist, 1/3 arm. I remember them defining this, and I was like, wait, what? And at the program that I grew up with, it was like 90%, 95%, if not 100% wrist. And so when they played accent tap, I think these were like all Memphis guys at the time. I remember they played like, I think that's my best impression of what I can remember, right? And all the guys who were in the center, they had this arm swinging thing, and all their arms moved at the same time, and their left hand. And meanwhile, my buddy Nick and I were standing hands, and we're going. And our elbows are not moving. And so we're just sticking out like a sore thumb as we're going through these auditions, and we had to go back for a month and show our teacher what we were doing. And he was a North Texas guy. He was like, what are you guys doing? But with video now, you can watch videos of all the groups, whether it's indoor or outdoor, and see videos of them from the previous year and show up looking like the center snare on the first day of the audition. If you haven't done your due diligence and watched all those videos, which I'm sure you have, but maybe you haven't paid attention to like what does it look like, what does it sound like, and what does it feel like when I look like them, then that's part of the preparation process. What's up, Reese? Ken, how's it going? Hi, guys. The Drummer Boy, what's up? Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Sorry. Colin. Hi, Colin. Hi, Nabilia. How are you? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in the room, guys. Great point, Dennis. This is a great conversation. You know, guys, take a moment. If you are digging the content, please take a moment to like and follow and subscribe to the channel, depending on whatever platform that you're watching. But also, if you think this would be a helpful discussion with your students or your other teacher colleagues, take a moment and share this out, because as you can see, like, we're getting a nice little discussion here with Dennis, and I'm sure there are a lot of other educators who are watching right now. So please take a moment to chime in, even if it's after the fact. You'll see these comments in the replays. Okay? Oh man, I feel like I'm going to be learning a lot from Dennis in this stream. Float says flams should sound like chot and not palat. Right? So if I'm interpreting this correctly, then a flame is not palat, but chot. So I did a bad demonstration of float flams. Are you getting accurate flams at the time? I heard Bill Bachman talking about this in one of his live streams that he was doing regularly for his Stir Crazy Drum School. He's like, if you're getting a flat flam or that plot that Dennis is talking about, like, consider that a wrong note. Can you get the same flam spacing regardless of how context, what context you're playing it in? Mechanics in the 80s playing on Myler heads, big difference, lots of downstroking. Yeah, same for me, Dennis. Even in the early 2000s, you know, we were very, it was like late 90s Cavaliers was my aspiration of what we were working towards. And now, you know, when I was teaching regiment in like 2013, 2014, definitely more arm, even more relaxed and fluid, I think. And you see all those groups. Like, the thing that I really admired once I got out of teaching and playing, and I would go watch, you know, the top 6 world-class groups, the vocabulary and the speed that they're playing with is at such a high level that if you're not relaxed and flowing, there's no way you can play that vocabulary that fast and that difficult. So it's got to be super relaxed. Jason Ralph says, has it been a week already? Good seeing you, bro. Yes, Jason, thank you very much. It has been a week. It's gone by pretty quick. And then one more comment from Dennis. Dennis, thanks for joining the stream today, man. This has been fun to hang. If nothing else, it's been fun kind of like hearing your perspective. No packets in the 80s, and no videos and no computers. Yeah, I know. When I tell my students that I grew up in a time without YouTube, they look at me like I'm just, you know, freaking a mummy from Egypt, ancient Egypt. So to learn that style of a line, you either had to go to a show, or rehearsal, or actually know someone in the line. Yeah. And that last bit, knowing someone in the line, that was something that was like the reason why I made it into Cavaliers the year that I did, was because I was going to school with 2 other guys who had marched Cavaliers the previous year. So we would rehearse together every night after marching band practice. And by the time we showed up to November camp, again, we already looked and sounded like one of the vets. And me and my buddy John, who were coming from regiment, we already looked and sounded like a vet, so we were 2 less guys that they had to worry about. World Famous Gamer says, hello, and God bless. And no phones! I know. Dude, Dennis, same for me as well. That was back in the day in Cavaliers where, you know, you had 120, however, I can't remember how many people there were now, 130 guys with no cell phones. We were looking for payphones. What are payphones? I had to explain what payphones were to my daughter the other day, and she just looked at me, she was like, what are you talking about? Okay, let's get back on track. We have just a little bit more time. So the next point that I mentioned here is that learning these patterns is an additive process. So regardless if you're learning this on a keyboard instrument or if you're drumming, it is an additive process. So you're scaffolding your skill sets as you're building up, and you can see this very clearly in this example. Let me pull this back up. Come up here. can hear my daughter laughing out there. She's supposed to be sleeping right now, which she clearly is not. Okay, so let's come up here. I wish there's a way to... Let me adjust this. Let me just close this out because basically this is the Drumline Chops version of that handout. And again, you get those free sheets, guys, huei-yuan.com/free lessons. Slide this over. Okay, so computer's getting a little laggy over here. It's getting warm. Okay, so you can see how, and we talked about this in last Sunday's lesson. This right here, that's the Haggadik that we work in this first layer, and then you just add one note, which is this, right? So you're adding one note. But then, because of this 5/4 syncopated pattern, it turns into a timing exercise. Because you're going 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 5E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 5E and, right? So very slowly, I mean, if you're having to take this chunk, and we haven't even talked about putting this with your feet yet, right? But let's slow this down. If you can't do it at 100, let me just give you a sample of what that sounds like, right? You're like, whoa, where's the beat? How does that work? So you can slow down to 50. And if that chunk is too big, maybe you just take the first two chunks and you just rep the first two chunks. First 3 beats. Okay? So I'll take this example. It's like 120 in this, so I'm going to slow it down to 60. I'm doing this separately from the video because I'm worried about sync issues with this. But if I try this, right? That was late, right? Okay, so a couple things that I'm trying to pay attention to. At this tempo, this is not going to be this is a little way more controlled than it would be at that 120 tempo, right? But the first thing is my left foot hitting with that first note. And then my foot comes right after that left hand. Foot. Maybe that's your first small chunk, and we're going we're going 50% of the tempo. And I know when I tell students, I'm like, oh yeah, you need to slow that down all the way to like 60. And they laugh, and I look at them, I go, why are you laughing? Like, seriously, you need to go slower than you think. Whatever tempo you think you're going slower, like, go even slower than that. Make it so easy for yourself that you know you're going to be able to do it correctly. And again, the goal is to get quality over quantity. Log those correct reps, right? So that first chunk. Okay? And then once I know where that foot placement is, I make sure my foot is with the metronome. My right hand's going to come in right on the E. E. 1 E and 2 E. 1 E and 2 E. 1 E and 2. 1 E and 2 E and 3. 1 E and 2 E and 3. Left foot, left hand. 1 E and 2 E and 3. So you can see that this turns into a little bit of a timing coordination bit even at 60, right? 2, 3, 4. So let's say you don't have me, right, as your teacher sitting across from you, but you've got this platform. You take this, and I'm going to highlight just a little bit before this, and I'm going to loop this chunk. And there's a couple things that it might help to have this, right? Because with the video, you see the motion, you see when you're lifting, you've got someone to kind of like visualize yourself across from. But also the notation, you have to understand that my foot falls on beat 2. All of a sudden it's like, oh, I see that left hand is on the downbeat of beat 3 right here. And so, you know, we're all different learners here. Some people learn better by rote, so you watch the video. Some people learn better by looking at the notation. And what you can do here with this, that again gets me really excited as an educator, is that If you're better at learning by notation, which is how I was in high school, and it was difficult for me to pick up things by rote, so I would say like, hey, can I learn this just by watching the video and not look at the notation? And if I'm stumped, then maybe I'll look at the notation. On the flip side, if you learn better by rote, then practice reading your notation and saying like, oh, I see the 16th note counts. That's, what's this squiggly thing called again? Oh, that's 2 flags to 16th rest. 1 E and 2, rest on beat 2. 1 E and 2 E and 3. And then put it all together, see if you can count as you're playing to make sure that you really understand where all the beats are falling. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 5 E and 5 E and. Did not do that very well. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 5 E and. One more time. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 5 E and. That's hard to say and play at the same time. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 5 E and. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 5 E and 1. So put all those pieces together, and this is what separates, right here at this point where we're at, this is what separates the pros, I think, from the amateurs, right? And admittedly, I was an amateur practice singer for a majority of my early career, and this is still something that is like haunts me when I practice. I have to constantly remind myself like, hey, make sure that you don't do this, right? Is you need to invest more time up front at a slower tempo, doing it correctly, and then when it comes time to speed it up, you'll find that process to be much easier, okay? Tell me if this sounds familiar. If you've ever learned something, and then as you start to speed it up, it disintegrates and falls apart really quickly, and then you hit this wall that you just can't get past. Okay? Typically when that happens, that tells me that either your hands are getting confused because they haven't really learned it correctly, or it's just beyond your technical ability or your cognitive processing speed ability, right? And so if you spend more time, thanks for those hearts, if you spend more time at that slower tempo, really programming yourself, oh, sorry, I'm missing a bunch of comments over here. Sorry, Instagram. But I do see those hearts coming through. Thank you guys. If you spend more time up front programming yourself correctly, then you'll see, like we're about to do here in a second, you'll see that speed up process of getting it up to performance tempo is going to come a lot easier and less painfully to you. Okay? And there's two things I want to add to this. So this is like the 2.0 of this practice. You've heard your teacher say, hey, practice slower, do more correct reps in the beginning. The 2.0 part of this is a couple things. The first thing is you may not hit show tempo in one practice session, right? Let's say your performance tempo is 100. I'm just going to choose an arbitrary number. Your performance tempo is 100, and you can only do it correctly at 50, at half the speed of the performance tempo, right? And it might take you 30 minutes just to do it right. Right? And that's your win for the day. You can play it all the way through with your feet, without breaking, counting out loud, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 5 E and 1. That's your win for the day. And then the next day, you can't do it at first in the beginning of your practice, and you kind of get it and you get to 50, and then you get it to 56 or maybe even 60, right? And then the next day you get it up to 60, on and on and on, and you're just gradually, it might take you a week, 2 weeks, sometimes an entire summer to get a part clean or correct. So if you try to rush that process, you're like, oh, I've got one practice, I'm cram learning, I just got the part and I need to have this down by tomorrow because there's a playing test, and you try to expedite the process, things are going to get weird. You're going to learn things incorrectly. Your hands are going to get confused. You're going to be teaching yourself incorrect habits. So part of a pro approach is to budget your time. How much time do I have until the performance? How far out from the performance do I need to start doing big reps instead of these small micro reps? And how much time do I need to start scaffolding my practice? So if I have 2 weeks, then I know that I'm starting here, and then these are the tempos that I need to be getting close to. And a couple weeks out, I might still be under tempo, but I need to be able to play it without breaking all the way through at a certain point, right? And the second tip about this, I know today's lesson is a lot of talking. Those of you guys who are still watching right now, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. But I think this is good information. This is the stuff that I wish someone had told me earlier. One of the things, there was a how to practice series that my buddy Todd Meehan, professor of percussion at Baylor University, was doing, and I was watching these interviews, and there was one little tidbit that I picked up from his interview with Nancy Zeltzman, which I thought was like, oh yeah, I do this, but I don't tell my students about it. And she vocalized it. I was like, oh, that's a good thing, I should mention this. Which is sometimes when you're learning music, you might just play it at tempo real quick, just to get a taste of what it feels like. And I think in Nancy's interview, she says, like, just to feel my hair in the wind, right? You get a feeling for where you're going, right? And in this case, if you watch the video, like, and then maybe you get to the third film. Oh, that's weird. Okay, so now you know where you're going. So as you're doing this, you remember that needs to be a flow motion. This needs to be relaxed, and you're not playing with a different stroke or approach that you're going to be playing with when you get to that performance tempo, right? So have a clear idea of where you're ending up as you're doing this slow, small chunk practice and logging those correct reps, because the less or the closer you are to what you're trying to get to eventually, then that's just going to make that transition process easier. Okay, coming up on the last couple tips here, guys. Hello from Brazil. Thank you. My buddy Dre is watching. Andreas, he says, you are old. And this comment is funny because Dre is older than I am. So, Dre is actually one of the guys that I've been talking to most recently, because I'm going to show you guys some of the things that we're doing that I'm already showing you with our Drumline Chops bit over here. Hello from Brazil. That's awesome. Thank you. Dennis says, bad habits are so hard to break. The groundwork needs to be laid in middle school if possible. Oh, absolutely. Totally agree. I remember when I first started seeing programs, like you see like the really super high performing high school programs, and you realize that like they're not getting that good in 4 years, like by the time they're a freshman to their senior. It's like people who are integrating, and the high school people are already teaching the middle school people from 6th grade. Now instead of a 4-year pipeline, you have a 7-year pipeline, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that longer pipeline is how, like you see these crazy videos. I saw a video of, shout out to Ryan and Tony, some Petal High School 8th grader who was just playing. You're like, what? This kid's in 8th grade? I didn't even know what drum corps or drumline was when I was in 8th grade, and they're already playing at such extreme levels. Again, because of technology and video now, it's super, super incredible. And that note that Dennis mentioned about bad habits are so hard to break. Side story: there was this one. He will not be named, but there was a guy in a line that I played in once who had mislearned a part, and he was adding a shot in one part of the music. I don't know why this sticks out in my memory so much, but he had mislearned the part, which is okay. We've all done that before, right? And he was adding a shot that nobody else was adding. And I was like, hey, there's no shot there, and he kept on playing the shot, and he's like, oh, okay, cool, thanks. But for the life of him, he could not get that shot out of his hands. Every time he got to that part, crack, 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 and you kept on hearing that shot coming from the outside of the line because he had mislearned the part. So Daniel Oscaria, my buddy from Hype to Clean, he makes a good point of this. When you're memorizing music, make sure that you're referencing back to the music periodically so that you're not accidentally mislearning or misremembering. So learning the music correctly is super important as you're going through that learning process. Tension is the enemy of musicians. Totally agree, Dennis. So making sure that you're transferring that relaxed ease of playing that you have at the slower tempos to your faster tempos, especially for drummers. Totally agree. I saw a couple comments come through on Instagram. Oops. Oh man, why did this view? Okay, definitely not. Leighton says, can I give tips on how to play traditional grip? Yes. Leighton, definitely not Leighton. Yes. Leighton. Yeah, absolutely Leighton. Again, this is so funny because a lot of times this is like the first time people are catching these live streams. Again, if you're joining me for the first time, thank you so much for coming in. And thank you to those of you who are sharing this out and tagging your friends in these videos. Left-hand traditional is like one of the questions I get asked about the most often, and it's actually not a super difficult setup process if you just take the correct steps getting into it. Okay, so if you go to my free lessons page, huei-yuan.com/free lessons, there's actually a left-hand traditional lesson with a handout. And we did one just like 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's match grip versus traditional grip. And there's a handout for that with some pictures on how to set it up from your fulcrum here, and then adding the first finger and the second finger, and then your ring finger, your pinky, and how to start building that wrist turn. Okay, with my technology pursuit that I've been doing for the last couple of years, I've now built a video course strictly for left-hand traditional. So the first 3 videos that will take you through how to set up everything, and it's the processes that I use to walk all my private lesson students through. And I've done it so many times now that I know what all the pitfalls are, and I've come up with a sequence to help people avoid those pitfalls and just develop those correct habits from the get-go. Okay, so if you go to drumlineblueprint.com/courses, you'll see Left-Hand Traditional Pro, and you can actually see those first 3 videos for free. We are in the beta launch of the course right now, so the full course, you can just get it in one lump sum, or there's also like a monthly subscription plan, because I know that sometimes, especially with the situation that we're in right now, the subscription is like $10 a month right now. So if you want to check it out, that might be another resource that you can check out. But there's also free resources. Go to the free lessons page. It's just longer. The course material is condensed. It's more streamlined. There's a community. You can access other teachers and players who are doing left-hand traditional. So, it's just another option that you can try out if you think it's helpful. Okay. All right. Let's come up with the close. We're going to wrap things up here. So once you get the sequence down and you're able to play it, this is where you start to gradually speed up. Okay, so if I'm here, this is still coming. Oh no. Is my video frozen? Uh-oh. Video's frozen. Sorry, YouTube, Facebook. Give me 1 second. Let me see. This happened to me last time. I think I can fix it. But this is going to get... This might blow up. So if this gets cut off, sorry, guys. Okay. So I can plug that and plugging this back in. Okay. This always happens like around the 1 hour mark. I think it's just a limitation on what's going on, and then my exposure settings get all whacked out. Let me fix this. Okay, so I'll do my best to... No, I shouldn't talk as I'm doing this because we're repurposing all this content for our Drumline Blueprint members. So I want to get a good explanation of this out for you guys. Give me 1 second. Instagram folks, we're coming up on the tail end of our stream here, so if you're still watching or if you're catching the replay, thanks for doing so. Appreciate you spending a little bit of your time today with me as we're going through this. Facebook, YouTube gang, just give me 1 second. Let me fix these exposure settings. Okay. Dennis Johnson fixed. Frozen. Brr. Yes, it is frozen. Okay, thanks, guys. All right, so we're back. Instagram, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the future stream. Drumline Blueprint, we still have a little bit of time over here if you're still coming in. Over a chunk. Okay. All right. So, practice tip 2.0. So you've gone slowly. You've done a bunch of correct reps. You're putting small chunks together. So you get the first beat, right? And then you combine that with the next beat. And you put those 2 beats together. And then you play the next beat, which is on the and. And then the S4E and S4E and right? So you put each of those beats together so you can play the first measure. And then you have to do that off the left hand as well, right? And then once you can do that off the left hand, then you put the right hand and the left hand all together. I think I'm just trying to run too many programs at the same time. So notice that we have not sped up this point. We're still at this like slow, I'm putting in air quotes, slow tempo. I don't think I'm going to be able to run this anymore. My computer's seizing. It's going into anaphylactic shock over here. Okay, I'll just have to explain it, but you can check this out. Okay. The hallmark of a pro player is once you're able to play it all the way through at one tempo, is you know how much faster you can bump the tempo and still do it correctly. It's almost like Name That Tune or The Price is Right. If I'm going 60, right? A lot of people will do it right once and only once instead of doing it 10 times correctly in a row, and then they'll all of a sudden try to go performance tempo. So they just went from 60 to 120, and you're like, whoa, that was way too big of a bid, right? So you need to go from 60 and say, like, let's just increase it 10 beats. But it doesn't have to be 10 beats, right? For some people, they could go 20 beats faster. For some people, they can only go 4 beats faster, right? So when you're practicing, you're getting a feel for what is your threshold, how much faster do you think you can do it? And the more experience you get and the more self-aware you get, the more accurate your bid is going to be, so that you're always continuing on that trajectory of correct reps as you gradually speed up. And last but not least, this is the last step that I'll leave everybody with, which is the key is you have to do this a little bit every day, right? So you're not going to hit that performance tempo in one day. It might take you 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years even. But practicing a little bit every day so that you're always taking one step forward or forward. Occasionally you might take one step back, but always more steps forward than steps back. And if you're anything like me, if you take a day off, 2 days off, a week off from live streaming, everything just gets a little bit rusty as you're doing it. So the best way to get really good at something is to do it a little bit every day. Consistency is going to be key in this so that you can see your progress day to day. Okay? Christian, my friend, welcome. Guys, I love how international these streams are. Thank you for coming in, Christian. Good to see you, my friend. Dennis says, this was cool. Saturday on Dr. John's live stream last week. Sat in on Dr. John's live stream. Lots of good things going on despite the virus isolation. Ready to get back in normal, whatever normal is. Keep on drumming, everyone. Don't stop. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks for all your tips and for your extra dialogue. That was fun. It was really fun to have you in the stream today, so thanks for coming in. Okay, guys, let me wrap up here. And if you have questions, please go ahead and throw those. We'll do a little bit of live Q&A here at the very end. But let me show you a couple things that are going on. So if you want to check out this Drumline shop, this is a demo link that we've got going on that we just worked on today. But if you sign up for a Drumline Chops account right now, or better yet, if you sign up for today's lesson or even last week's egg beater lesson, I'm going to be sending out this egg beaters video link so that you can have like a video reference to play along with, right? And there's a couple things that you're going to need to do if you want to, because this is still in its beta phase. This is a beta thing that we're building for our members, but it's also something that we're doing with our institution accounts. So Dre was in here a little bit earlier. Dre is one of the pilot institution accounts that we've been working with. We're starting to apply some of these learning video and notation tools to school programs. So programs that are interested in building these like archive, library, practice tools for their students. We're building these out with a few of our friends of Drumline Chops. And so the first thing you're going to want to do is if you just go to drumlinechops.com and you can create a free account. And then when you create that free account, the next thing you're going to want to do is just go on Facebook, which is where our private members group area is. And you can just search Drumline Chops members. And it's a new members page that we're doing. But this is where we're going to be sharing a lot of these pilot materials that we're building. And then you'll see that this is a place for us to have a little bit of discussion with each other and share videos and see what's working, what's not interested. And it's kind of in these more discussion-oriented situations. Like I've gotten a couple messages from people that are like, oh, I've heard about the Drumline Chops institution accounts that you guys are doing, like how do I sign up for it? We're not rolling it out to like any institution that wants to sign up right now. We're still kind of in the pilot phase where we're approaching friends with programs who are already starting to incorporate some sort of video or notation or flip lessons within their programs. And then we're just adding on another layer of service of how do we integrate these and building these libraries for those teachers and their students to access. So if you're interested in learning more about this, or you're like, oh, that's really cool, I want to hear more about it, sign up for drumlinechops.com. It's free. Sign up for a free account on the website. Join our Drumline Chops members group so that we can start talking and get to know a little bit more about your program, and you can learn more about what we're doing and see if it's a good fit for you. And then we have 3 institutions that are on it right now. There are 3 more institutions that might be starting soon. We've been in talks about it, but the challenge here and the thing that we want to be careful is that we want to make sure that we give 100% attention to each institution that we're serving at first, so that, again, quality over quantity. And then the goal for 2020 is to have 10 institutions up and running once that we've got the process and the flow for this set up. So if that's something that you'd be interested in checking out, you can just... Oh, my video froze again. Sorry. If that's something that you're interested in checking out, you can go over there. And how do I go back into my normal... I can't even get to the secondary screen again. Okay, I'll just flip to this camera. All right, this will be the end of today's stream. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching. It's Ram. Thanks for watching over here, guys. Thank you. If you guys have any questions or additional questions, we're gonna wrap here for today. But if you do have questions, just let us know, and we'll cover them in the next stream. Do we use velocity even going slow tempo? Yeah, great question. So you might have to adjust a little bit for the slower tempos. Let me bring this down. I feel like I'm looking in the sky. Yeah, you might have to adjust a little bit for the slower tempos, but what you can do, my microphone's over here. This is not working. Is you want to try to reproduce what it's going to feel like when you go that faster tempo, but it might change as you're going through it. So at that slower tempo, you might have to stroke it out just a little bit more, but keep in mind that you still want it to flow so that when you do go faster, it's going to be the correct tempo. Okay? Good question, guys. All right, gang. Thanks for tuning in on the Sunday live stream, for catching us on the replay. Thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone's doing well. We're doing okay over here. Trying to keep things as normal as possible. Mow the lawn today. And I think that's it. So, okay. Starting to babble here. Huei-Yuan.com/free lessons. Check out the free handouts. Check out drumlineblueprint.com. Come over here. Drumlinechops.com. If you want that left-hand traditional course, that's on Blueprint. You can come over here, start your free trial here. Once you're in, just search this Drumline Chops members group. It's a private group that we have, but you can check out that group and join it, and that's where you can start learning more about some of the tools that we have built for that. Okay? All right. That's all we have for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Thanks again for tuning in. Like, subscribe, follow, share, and we'll see you next Sunday. Thanks. Bye, guys.